An unexpected star stole the spotlight at a Dior fashion show in Istanbul, Turkey, and it wasn't wearing heels. This adorable stray cat surprised everyone in the room by showing what a real catwalk looks like. But no one was ready for what happened next. The ESMA International Fashion Show had just begun, with elegant models gliding across the runway, when a furry black and white visitor strolled right into the middle of it all. She didn't sneak in quietly. No, this cat took center stage, plopped down on the runway, and started grooming herself like she owned the place. Models kept walking, music played on, but this little show stealer didn't bat an eye. Security looked unsure. Should they move her? But the guests' laughter and clapping made it clear. The kitty was now part of the event. The models adjusted without hesitation, stepping gracefully around her as she kept cleaning her fur, completely at ease. Then, just as the crowd thought it couldn't get any cuter, this cat decided to walk the runway herself. With smooth, confident steps, she strolled down the catwalk like she'd been doing it for years. At one point, she stopped and just soaked in the attention, striking a pose more natural than any model could. But her playful side soon took over. A dangling piece of fabric from a passing dress caught her eye, and she pounced. The surprised model had to move fast to protect the outfit, while the audience burst out laughing. Still not satisfied, the kitty trotted back to the end of the stage for one more act. As another model walked by, focused on her exit, the cat reached out and gently pawed at her leg, as if asking, "Hey, aren't you going to pet me?" The model kept walking, but the crowd was loving every second of it. Behind the scenes, the organizers were a bit nervous. Was this little scene stealer taking too much attention away from the dresses? But the fashion designer, Guxon Hockey, saw things differently. He was impressed. This cat had captured the room's attention without causing chaos. In his words, maybe she was exactly what fashion needed, a breath of fresh air. As the show wrapped up, the cat strolled over to the front row, rubbing up against a few guests and collecting some well-earned pets. Though clearly a stray, she was calm and sweet and seemed to love the attention. Then, as if she knew her performance was complete, she walked out just as gracefully as she had entered. But this wasn't the end of her story. Among the guests was a woman named Emily, who had been completely charmed. She and her husband Mark decided they wanted to take the cat home. After the show ended, they stayed behind, searching for her in the streets around the venue. But the little model had vanished. Istanbul is full of stray cats, and though many locals care deeply for them, the streets aren't always safe. Emily and Mark, visiting from the U.S., were amazed by how cats in Turkey are treated. They roam freely, cared for by everyone, and owned by no one. That may be why this particular kitty had felt so comfortable walking into a crowded fashion show. The couple learned that stray cats in Turkey are protected by law. Harming them is a serious offense. Still, activists believe every cat deserves a home. Emily couldn't stop thinking about it. She didn't want to give up. That evening, she and Mark returned to the area, setting out some food to try and lure her back. A kind street vendor had a bag of kibble, which Emily bought without hesitation. They waited and waited. Other cats came by, dozens, rubbing against their legs, hoping for affection. Mark joked about adopting one of them, but Emily stayed firm. "I want the one from the runway," she said. "Only her." Hours passed. The city began to quiet down. Feeling disappointed, they started packing up, ready to call it a night. That's when they heard a soft meow right next to the car. It was her, the same bold kitty from the runway. Emily froze for a second, trying not to scare her off. She slowly pulled a few kibbles from her pocket and held them out gently. The cat sniffed the food, crunched it happily, and then, without hesitation, hopped into the back seat of their car. It felt like she had been searching for them too, and now that she'd found them, she was home. Emily softly told her they wanted to take her in, but the little model was already curled up and fast asleep. That was all the answer they needed. Emily turned to Mark and whispered, "Let's go." Once they got to their Airbnb, the sleepy kitten padded around the place like she owned it. She made herself cozy without hesitation, like she'd done this before. It made them wonder maybe she hadn't always been a stray. Emily checked her closely, hoping to find a collar or a tag, but there was nothing. So she decided to move forward with adopting her. But first, the cat needed a name. Emily had an idea. Instead of picking a name herself, she'd let the cat decide. She sat next to her on the floor and began softly calling out names. Amy? No reaction. Ginger? The kitty meowed right away, then nuzzled up and gave her little nose kisses. That was it. She had chosen. Ginger snuggled up to Emily's leg and drifted off again. From that moment, she wasn't just a visitor. She was family. Over the next few days, Emily and Mark took Ginger to a local vet for a full checkup. The little star was full of energy and didn't seem bothered by the new place. Since her fashion show appearance had gone viral online, even the vet staff were excited to meet her. Ginger, of course, loved every second of it, and thankfully, she got a clean bill of health. Emily felt relieved. She thought the hardest part was behind her. But that changed when the vet explained that they didn't know much about how to bring a cat into the U.S. The process was handled by the CDC and USDA's Animal Health Branch, and the rules weren't simple. So Emily dove into the paperwork, determined to get everything done in time. The first step was a microchip. But finding a place that offered the service wasn't as easy as she'd hoped. With help from a local animal rescue group, she finally got Ginger chipped. Next came the vaccinations, especially the rabies shot. Without it, Ginger might not even be allowed on the flight, and even if she was, she could be quarantined once they arrived. Emily made sure Ginger got the vaccine and arranged for the follow-up test to prove her body developed the antibodies. It was pricey, but Emily didn't care. Ginger was worth every cent. But then came the setback. After the shot, Ginger had to wait up to 8 weeks before the test could be done and her travel papers approved. That meant she couldn't fly with Emily. Her flight was in just 7 days. Emily felt crushed. Tears filled her eyes as she tried to figure out what to do. She couldn't delay her trip forever, but leaving Ginger behind didn't feel right either. She made up her mind. She would still get Ginger vaccinated and figure the rest out as she went. One way or another, she'd find a way to bring her home. As soon as the shot was done, Emily began asking around for someone who could care for Ginger during the waiting period. Ginger's sweet personality helped a lot. Plenty of people offered to help. Still, Emily wanted to be sure she was leaving her in the best hands possible. She narrowed it down to one woman, Alara, a kind-hearted volunteer from the rescue center that helped her with the microchip. Alara was in her 50s, and her home already had a cat and a small dog. Ginger wouldn't be alone, and Emily could feel this was the right place. Alara promised she'd call with daily updates. Emily's flight was set for 5 p.m. the next day, so after saying goodbye to Ginger, she still had packing to do. That final hug was the hardest. She held Ginger close and whispered that she'd come back for her. Normally full of energy, Ginger seemed unusually down. It was like she sensed something was off. When they arrived at Alara's home, Ginger clung tightly to Emily and didn't want to let go. Emily tried to stay strong, but her heart was breaking. Alara gently stepped in to help separate them, while Ginger cried out and let out little huffs as if trying to explain how unfair it all was. Alara calmly carried her inside, while Emily broke down in tears in the car. Mark stayed close, holding her as she cried. It was a tough goodbye, but she reminded herself it was only temporary. Later that afternoon, Emily boarded her flight and left Istanbul behind, the city where she'd found a little soul who changed everything. While Emily flew across the sky, Ginger stayed hidden under Alara's bed. The once confident little cat barely moved. Alara tried toys, treats, even warm blankets, but nothing helped. Ginger wouldn't eat, and she avoided everyone. Alara grew concerned and considered calling the vet. But before that, she tried one last thing. As soon as Emily's plane landed, Alara called her and put her on speaker. The moment Ginger heard Emily's voice, she ran out from under the bed and meowed loudly. It was clear this cat had truly bonded with her. Emily's heart broke hearing how upset Ginger had been, but she stayed on the line, softly encouraging her to eat. Little by little, Ginger began accepting treats again. She even started warming up to Alara. Knowing that Ginger was adjusting made it easier for Emily to sleep at night. Despite the time difference, she called every single day. And soon, Ginger would hop onto Alara's table as soon as the ringtone played, ready to hear her voice. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. Ginger's rabies test came back with the right antibodies, and the vet gave the go-ahead. The final step was getting official permission to travel. The agency responsible, the Orman Bakanligi, had to issue her travel documents. Emily worked with the Istanbul vet to file the request and waited for word. But after 2 weeks of silence, she began to worry. She reached out to the vet, who finally managed to get some information. The paperwork might take up to 3 months. Emily was crushed. Mark noticed how it was affecting her and started getting concerned too. He knew she couldn't keep waiting without some hope. Without telling her, he reached out to his friend Vlad, who was traveling through Europe. He asked if Vlad could swing by Istanbul and check on things in person. Vlad agreed. He loved animals too and wanted to help. Mark had one goal: get Ginger home in time for Emily's birthday. Vlad took the job seriously. Once in Istanbul, he met with the vet and found out that the documents were nearly done. That was the breakthrough they'd been waiting for. Mark immediately booked a flight for Ginger. Before takeoff, she needed one more vet check. Thankfully, Ginger passed again with no issues. With everything in place, Ginger was finally ready to go home. On flight day, she calmly stepped into her travel carrier like she knew this was it. Alara brought her to the airport and stood by as the airline staff took her in. She smiled through the sadness. Happy Ginger was heading to her forever home, but already missing her presence. Vlad said his goodbyes and boarded the plane with her. The plan was going smoothly, but there was one last little twist. The flight from Istanbul to the U.S. happened to fall right during Emily's usual call time. Alara watched as her phone rang and rang. She longed to pick up, but knew she couldn't spoil the surprise. Back home, Emily paced around in growing worry. Something didn't feel right. It was Emily's 36th birthday, and the only thing she truly wanted was to hear Ginger's voice during their usual call. But as the day went on with no update, she started to lose hope. She even considered canceling the little celebration Mark had planned, but he gently encouraged her not to. "Let's just have a nice evening," he said. Reluctantly, she agreed. Mark set up the backyard with simple decorations and invited a few close friends. Throughout the evening, he kept checking his phone, clearly waiting for something. Emily noticed, but assumed he had planned a surprise gift. Not wanting to ruin anything, she pretended not to notice. When it was time to sing happy birthday, her friends gathered around her with cake in hand. "Make a wish," someone said. Emily closed her eyes and thought of Ginger, her silly, sassy, unforgettable cat. Just then, something brushed against her leg. She opened her eyes and looked down, and gasped. Ginger was standing right there. Tears spilled down Emily's face. "How?" she asked, dropping to her knees and hugging Ginger close. Mark explained everything. He told her how he had asked Vlad to check on the paperwork in Istanbul, and how they rushed to make it happen just in time. Emily was speechless. In 36 years, this was the first time a birthday wish had come true right in front of her eyes. She was overwhelmed with love, not just for Ginger, but for the people around her who helped make this moment possible. After lots of cuddles and introductions, she carried Ginger inside to let her rest. But there was one more surprise waiting. When Emily walked down the hallway, she noticed their spare room looked different. She stepped in and gasped again. It had been transformed. A cat tree stood tall in the corner, with wall bridges, tunnels, and a cozy bed all set up for Ginger. A scratching pad sat by the window where the sun streamed in. Mark had renovated the whole room just for her. Emily stood in the doorway, holding back tears. Ginger wandered in slowly, sniffed everything, and immediately curled up on the soft bed like it had always been hers. She was still tired from the long trip, but just as Emily turned to leave the room to let her sleep, Ginger let out a loud, protesting meow. Emily smiled, walked back, and scooped her up gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're home now, and we're never letting you go." Since the day that bold little stray crashed a fashion show in 2018, the video has continued to pop up online again and again, each time making people smile. Ginger may not have become a supermodel, but she found something better. A family who would go to the ends of the earth to bring her home. Would you do the same for a pet? Tell us in the comments, and if you enjoyed Ginger's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. See you in the next video.